Madam Chair. I just want to take a quick minute to recognize one of our great state and local leaders we have with us today, Jackson County Commissioner Keith Kelly. Keith, would you just kind of, yep. This Commissioner Kelly's done a great job in Jackson County. He's been on the commission for 5 years. Thank you for your leadership and really appreciate all that you're doing. As you may know, a lot of those county commissioners take a lot of heat, and that's a tough, thankless job a lot of times. So thank you, Commissioner Kelly, and welcome to the Capitol today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, Senator Bowser. Do we have any bill introductions today from the committee? I don't see any in the audience. All right. So today we have actually our first hearing. It's and only one hearing on the agenda today is SB 144, invalidating restrictive covenants that limit or prohibit the installation of solar panels and allowing the adoption of reasonable rules by homeowner associations concerning solar panels. Charles, do you have a briefing for us? Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think you already briefed the bill. You did it. So I would just add that this is similar to a bill from the 2024 session, Senate Bill 506. That bill did not get a hearing during that session. And one other note, and that would be that if the committee decides to pass this out, it would need an amendment to fix the dates, since it is a bill from last year. With that, stand for questions.
Thank you, Charles. Any questions, committee? All right, thank you very much. Well, first up, she's not on your agenda. We're going to introduce Senator Holscher. Cindy, we'll let you come up first in case you have other commitments that you need to go to, and her testimony is in our packets right on top also. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you so much for having me. First bill of the year, did you say?
Well, we've had some hearings
okay.
on budget, so you're like the first one.
Well, very good.
Hey,
well, thank you so much for having me. This bill is the result directly of constituent feedback. I knock hundreds of doors every summer talking to constituents in my district, and this topic comes up daily. We have a lot of restrictive covenants in Johnson County and Senate District 8 in particular that prohibit our constituents, our voters, from making decisions about their homes. So like I said, this bill is directly the result of feedback from constituents. So this testimony again covers this issue. The bill was brought forward again as a result of people who brought concern about the covenants that are so restrictive that they prevent the consideration of solar panels onto homes. As mentioned in the second paragraph, in many cases, these covenants are decades old, and often the leaders of the HOA groups do not want to revisit those covenants or refuse to do so. Homeowners want to be able to make improvements to their homes and save energy. The intent of the bill is not to mandate that HOAs allow solar panels, but rather requires the HOA board to revisit the topic for consideration, and then the board can implement and devise whatever rules they want. Respective HOAs are still welcome to adopt certain provisions regarding solar panels, but under this bill would not be able to continue to impose a provision that may likely be very outdated. When I first moved to Johnson County, like 26 years ago, to give you kind of a similar parallel, many HOAs required cedar shingles, that's hard to say, as at that time they were considered aesthetically pleasing. Interestingly, that product, of course, was combustible and considered a fire hazard, but that was the standard in the area. That's what many of our HOAs said had to be used on the rooftops in our neighborhoods. I recall the pushback by many of the HOAs in the area when people started talking about the change, and that's what we're seeing right now, and that's what we've been seeing the past decade. Similarly, again, this is what we are seeing, this pushback to making the change to align solar panels. Again, residents aren't asking the legislature to make the rules for the HOAs, just help them in allowing the conversation and the process to move forward versus being held back by antiquated covenants being used as a roadblock. Thank you for your consideration, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holscher. last year you had introduced this bill, so this is our first opportunity to have a hearing on it, so thanks for being patient with us. Does the committee have any? Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. I have a question, if you don't mind. When I'm looking at the in Section 1B, it says a homeowners association may adopt reasonable rules, and I can see that as a problem. I don't know what's reasonable. You know, I found out that a lot of people have different words, what it means by reasonable. What did you have in mind with this? Thank you.
Thank you. The different HOAs have standards that they adhere by. So, you know, some of them have standards in terms of paint colors that can be utilized. So, you know, we're just saying that, you know, what those standards are, they're allowed to continue to conform to those standards that are within reason, that have to also then comply with local municipalities. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I don't know how you can word it. I know that's a problem writing it up. I'm just saying the word reasonable. My wife and I have different things what we consider reasonable. Okay.
I can't help you with you and your wife. I'm going to phone a friend here and see if Zach wants to elaborate on that.
So welcome to the podium. This is Zach Pastoria, Sierra Club. So you have an answer to that question?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. We would consider reasonable regulations or reasonable standards to be about maybe color, making sure that there's no overhang of the panel on the roof, the tilt of the panel so it's sleek along the roof line, and then making sure that, you know, any electrical conduit that the panels would need could be hidden underneath the panels or within the attic space. Those are some of the things that would accommodate homeowners associated and make sure that the panels look really nice. You know, there's light colored panels with kind of blue with a light framing for light colored roof. And then there's dark, you know, black colored panels with black framing for dark roofs. So we would say those sorts of standards would be reasonable. Some of the things that say, you know, depending on where the house is oriented to the street, it wouldn't make sense that panels be on the north side of the home. Doesn't really collect as much sunlight on the north side of the home. So we would ask that HOAs consider not to impair the ability to collect the solar as best as can on the solar panels. Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Holzer? All right, thank you for being with us. And if you have to go on to your next meeting, we understand. So thank you. Next on our agenda is WebEx. We have Nicholas Simara, Foxfield Village Homeowners Association. Welcome to the committee, Nicholas.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine, and we have your testimony in front of us too, so feel free not to read it. You can sure paraphrase it with us and have a conversation if we have questions, so thank you.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, in summary of my statement, of my testimony, I have been as far as my credentials go, I'm a home builder in this neighborhood. My house is almost 20 years old. Actually almost 21 years old. I've been on our board acting in some facility for 15 years, the president for 15. I do not come as a representative of the board. I come as an individual. So these are my own opinions and thoughts. But the reasoning that I did get onto the board is because we have so many amenities and so many good things in our neighborhood that I wanted to make sure those were kept up while maintaining people's rights to be able to use their yards, their homes as their property, right? To avoid very restrictive enforcement of some things along, you know, those lines. That being said, because that's obviously what happens in some homeowners associations, or so I've heard, I was hoping to get ahead of that and allow for folks to really enjoy their yards, their lots, their homes. And it's been very successful. We've kept up all of our amenities in the black. We have significant reserves. We get very little pushback, honestly, no pushback, almost nothing but praise. We have a very happy neighborhood. All is good. That being said, there is a document like Senator Holscher discussed called our Declaration of Restrictions, which was established by the developer when this community was developed 25 years ago. There are portions of them that are obviously from a form when it was filled out. The owners really had, at that time and future, no choice in defining those or setting those up. We just kind of have to live by them. And those are what we do try to interpret when people want to do things in their homes to make sure it's fair for everyone. In this case, the solar panels at the time were kind of categorized in the section of this document as a unsightly projection in other unsightly projections, such as a clothes hanger, a clothesline, a large ham radio antenna. Apparently, the Times showed that these things at one point or another were fairly unsightly and they did not want to have them. Since then, technology has absolutely developed to the point where they are significantly more efficient. They're much more streamlined. They're sleek. And nobody in our neighborhood really feels as though they should be prohibited. But to be fair to the document, we can't just let that go without saying, well, why don't you let other things go? Then why don't we change it? Well, changing the Declaration of Restrictions per the documentation is Herculean. It is incredibly difficult to do per the document itself. Getting 2/3 of the owners to sign off on a change, it's almost a non-starter at this point. I mean, to have our annual meeting, we simply need a quorum of members, and we do this. You can be in person, you can fill out a proxy form, you can come in a WebEx like this, and we barely get enough to hold this because when things go well, people are happy and they don't really tend to participate. I think that shows that the HOA is doing well, but that does stick us in a predicament where we can't make a meaningful change like this, especially in light of rising electricity prices, more electricity uses by data centers, things like that we can't control, more adoption of electric vehicles, things like that, that being able to allow generation of electricity at a local place will not only help each individual in the neighborhood, but the community at large by reducing our need on the grid at that time. So again, this isn't because I think we should have this. We need to get, buck our documentation to get around it. It is simply an outdated, antiquated thing that we don't have the tools to meaningfully change, even though folks want to do it. And that's really it in summary. So any questions for me?
Thank you very much. Committee, do you have any questions? I think you answered this one for me. This change would happen at an annual meeting. Is that right?
Well, that's what's difficult about it. I could pull up, I have the documents here. I don't necessarily need to share it, but it is defined very clearly in our Declaration of Restrictions that the provisions of this declaration may be amended, modified, or terminated in whole or in part at any time by a duly acknowledged and recorded written agreement signed by the owners of at least 2/3 of the lot within the subdivision as then constituted, and it goes on from there. So it doesn't necessarily happen at an annual meeting. It can happen at any time, but 2/3, we've got 500 units, owners in here, and then it's divided up more complicated into sub-associations that aren't single-family owners who would have to be involved in this as well, and it's just a very difficult thing to do. It's not clear how to go about this. Do we have to have a meeting and hope they all appear? Could we do a petition? Again, it's something that we have talked about and tried to start, and nobody can find an effective or efficient way to do this. And even talking with our lawyers, they said it's going to be difficult, and there's really no way to guarantee that we'll have any kind of participation that would allow this to happen in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate your comments. We also have another WebEx. Next is Goka Ramani, and a Kansas homeowner. Are you with us?
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you for having me. Chair Bowers, Vice President Breckman, and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 144. My name is Gokul Ramani. I'm a Kansas homeowner. I support this bill because in my own experience, it showed me how under the current law, access to solar energy can depend on who you know rather than clear, fair, and consistently applied standards. I live in the south end of Wyndham Park subdivision. I've been living here for 3 years. I noticed that there were 2 homes that already had solar installed. And I went and checked with my HOA. They were approved. So it was in 2022 and 2024. I checked with the Johnson County records, and they were permitted, and it seems like everything was established and working good. So I approached my HOA, and before that, I did everything right. I got city permits, electricity utility approval, engineering review, all approved by concerned authorities. Then I went to the HOA. Then the HOA president, interestingly, gave me a call back, which I never got a call from my HOA president, and asked me basic questions like the size and the color, which I fully answered. And I basically said it's the same thing that's there in the other two homes. I later learned that that my solar panels were deemed unreasonable, even though it was fully compliant and similar to the installations already approved in the subdivision. So when I saw transparency, I discovered that the same HOA leadership had approved prior installations, but not mine. And then the HOA leadership went as far as to contacting other neighbors and telling them not to support my solar panels, although it wasn't very clear why this kind of selective enforcement was done. After this experience, several homeowners, and I tried to address this through the HOA's internal process, they were not able to meet quorum or meet the required number of mailed votes, although everybody in person will have documented in the minutes that they're in favor of my request, and other people are also requesting the same thing. Like many HOAs, our meets very infrequently and lacks any practical mechanisms to update the rules in a timely way. Yeah, then the architectural committee came by and they took a look at my house, and they thought that it was aesthetically pleasing, and it wasn't like whatever I was doing was in what people do with modern solar installations. There was a lot of misconception that solar panels can cause glare, noise, aesthetic disruption, but all this was investigated and found to be not a reality for modern solar panels. And eventually the new leadership came in. Our HOA president had to step down, and eventually I got the solar panels approved, but it was such a monthly process that took several months. When properly permitted and installed, I don't think they have an impact on neighboring properties. SB 144 doesn't eliminate any HOA authority, just that in my case,
Looks like we may have lost him, yes? What if he's back? All right, wonderful. Did we have you again?
I'm sorry, my
Yeah,
phone got cut.
Now we hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can I continue? I feel like there's a
yes,
lot
go-
of misconception that solar panels can cause a lot of aesthetic issues, but really modern solar panels, I feel like they look really good. To my eyes, they look very modern. They look like a new home, not like from 30 years ago, like when we had shake shingles back then, but now we have more modern materials. And HOAs, they're trying to, I guess, not get in trouble, so they don't want to make any changes themselves. Or I think a bill like this would really help homeowners support our home improvement projects. All I was doing was get a home improvement project done. I didn't want to rely on the grid. I wanted to rely on my own energy. I wanted to know where that energy came from. I really value my house. I go into a lot to look at the aesthetics and make sure it ties into the whole property. I think as long as HOAs can have an architectural committee, which they should, and they can go check out the property and see whether it's not like overhanging, like others said, or sitting at an angle, or looking unsightly. But modern solar panels, they look really good, and we can see them in many homes around. And to my eyes, those homes look the best. They look really good, and times have changed, and I think we should adapt to those changes. So for these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to support SB 144. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and glad you had a successful end to your problem. Just a hard line to get there. Any questions, committee? It doesn't look like we have any. Thank you for joining us again. Next on our agenda in person is Jack Pastoria, Sierra Club. Hello again, Zach.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Zach Pastora. I'm the proud lobbyist, chapter director, the state director for Sierra Club in Kansas, and added a new role, new dad. So if I fumble on my speech this morning, forgive me. We represent over 4,000 dues-paying members across the state. We have members in every single district in both the Senate and the House, which is pretty exciting. So we have constituents of yours across the state of Kansas. We first got contacted about this and introduced a similar bill separately on the House side 2 years ago. It was a man out of Olathe, a truck driver. His wife was a school teacher, and his brother was a Sierra Club member, but he wasn't allowed to put, and he is self-identified, this man said, he was a self-identified conservative Republican that wanted to take his energy bills into his own hands, and so he put up solar panels on his home, only to find out that his HOA didn't allow them. So they made him take them down and put them in his garage. And he wanted us, he told his brother, and his brother told us, hey, we should do something about this and try to change state law. And then here separately, without collaboration, your fellow senator introduced her bill about this. So glad to be before you. We support the right of homeowners to be able to harness the sunlight across the state, the same sunlight that keeps our bodies warm, that helps grow our crops, but it could also be used as a valuable source of energy, especially in the light of rising electricity demand, electric rates, et cetera. So we would support this bill because we do feel these decades-old restrictions on these HOAs could use some treatment by the state to say, hey, we prioritize affordable energy across Kansas. We need more energy, not less. And we support the freedom, the rights of Kansans to take energy matters into their own hands. And you wouldn't be alone in passing such a legislation. Over 32, by my count, 32 states have what we call solar access laws, including some of our peer states, including Missouri, who passed this by wide margins in 2022, as well as in Texas, Indiana. I've put in Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, the list goes on. So I just want to say that there are similar provisions. This language looks pretty similar in those other states. One thing I wanted to address, I did see the comment in the opponent's testimony about maybe providing it to, if they are a owner of the property versus a renter. And we say that could be a friendly amendment, that if you're owner of that household, then you should be allowed to do it versus if you don't exactly own it. So I just wanted to address that real quickly. I want to kind of zoom out just a little bit. I mentioned the reasonable standards that we could adopt. We could put those in writing if you want to include that in the bill, or you could allow some flexibility for the homeowners association to discuss that for themselves. We just think it's due time that we have a reset, given 2026 here now and the availability of solar panels and technology, kind of reset those old covenants and have a deliberate discussion about this. And then we think it would be a positive benefit of the state. Of course, our members, many of them adopt solar to help making a positive impact in the environment, making sure that we can have a local homegrown resource that doesn't pollute the atmosphere, et cetera. But more and more, just like this man from Olathe, it's about trying to take energy matters into your own hands and rely a little less on the monopoly utility to power your home. And in emergency situations, you could provide an extra source of accommodations, energy security, if you will, so that your home is protected and to help your neighbors in case they aren't. Zooming out a little bit more, Kansas has one of the best resources for solar power of any state in the country. I think we're in the top 10 for the solar resource. Unfortunately, we're near the bottom 10 for actual solar power. And so we have a lot of opportunity, just like we were wind 20-some years ago, didn't have any wind. And in that time, about half of our power can be sourced from a homegrown Kansas and very affordable energy resource. So in short, we think that this is a bill that can be passed for individual freedom. We think it would be powerful for our energy supply in Kansas, help lower electric rates. And don't take my word for that. That was a study by the legislature. And some of you on the utilities might remember that. AECom did a study that said more solar in Kansas would help drive down electric bills. So we think this offers a number of, and don't get me started, when we had our hearing in local government on the House side a couple of years ago, we had some solar businesses discuss their reality of dozens and dozens of homes that they tried to help and do business with were some implicated one way or another by these restrictive covenants. So putting them the solar on the wrong side of the roof or even outline solar in the first place. So I'll just leave it there. I'll be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Senator Reckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Zach Astoria,
Yep.
the lobbyists for the Sahara Club, and I love your passion. Okay, I even hugged a tree once. Anyway, my question is just in general about solar energy. You mentioned it, that it's a way to reduce energy bills and so on. Can you kind of help me what it costs to put it up and how much it does save? I know it's not really, it has to do with the bill, but just because I'm interested in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide more information about that in specifics. I'm one of those people that would love to have solar panels, just haven't got there yet to put it on my own home. So for what that's worth, I wish I knew more about that. Many of our members have installed solar panels. I think you've received some written testimony from folks that have installed it. My understanding is it can cost, $10,000 to $15,000 for on average, but there's a payback period on your utility bills. Some people will make that up pretty quick, depending on their energy usage. Others won't as quick, but will eventually get there. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. I mean, a lot of people do it because they see it as economical for them, and they're willing to take a 10 to 15 year payback and investment on their homes. As the gentleman said, I think there's an opportunity to increase the value of your home too. Having some solar panels on it makes it a more modern, efficient home, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Senator Fascadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Zach. So the gentleman that you talked about in your presentation, you gave an example. What area of the state of Kansas did he live in?
That was Olathe, Kansas, northeast Kansas. Yep.
Okay. And so did you reach out to you mentioned that you have members in all of our districts. So did you reach out to the homeowners associations in, one or two of them in all four corners of the state? Thank you.
Great question, Senator. I'd say that in the past we have seen, and I can get it before you, documented a list of our outreach. I mean, we've put it up on our website. If you've had problems with solar homeowners associations blocking your attempt to get solar, we've captured some of that information. I'll just say I know we've had some people. I believe it's called the Turkey Hills. Neighborhood in Wichita. Remember, we had a conferee testify to that in the past. So I'll try to get that information. I know because of the early nature of this hearing, we didn't get as many people to submit written testimony as I'd like to, but hopefully we can get that information for you for a good decision.
Madam Chair, thank you. And so, Zach, not so much of your list of proponents who have submitted written testimony, and the good Senator Holscher and et cetera. But, I always want to hear from the other side. So just wondering if you talked to the president of the Homeowners Association, just getting their opinion. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator, I would say I would gladly have a conversation. I didn't know if we had a homeowners association lobbyist up here. I'd be glad or a representative would be glad to establish a dialogue. From my recollection, when we had this hearing on the House, we had no opponents, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Zach. We have one more proponent, and then we do have one WebEx opponent, so we want to save time for the opponent as well, and then questions. So let's move on to Herbert J. Carey, and a private citizen. Welcome to the committee, Herbert. Or well, perhaps I should say Jake. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak on Senate Bill 144. I appreciate your time. My name is Herbert Sidney Harry IV, but most people know me as Jake Harry. I'm originally from San Diego, California, played football at the University of Missouri, go Tigers, and I now reside in Overland Park, Kansas. I'd like to take this time to speak on energy independence. Before I get into that, I need to provide how I arrived here for all the differing political views on this issue. Before entering the renewable industry, I worked in oil and gas in Alaska. From a young age, it was all that I knew as an only reliable energy source, being third generation in my family to do so. When the state economy took a downturn in Alaska in 2016 due to lack of energy diversification, my wife and I moved to Colorado, and I accepted an opportunity and started my career in the solar industry. Due to my previous employment, I was a skeptic of the renewable industry and the effectiveness it provided. I was immediately proven wrong. In 2021, my family and I moved to Kansas City, which created a new challenge in my career. I still battle to this day, educating my peers in the Midwest on the effectiveness and reliability of renewable energy such as solar and battery storage. We, the people of the United States, continue to see an ever-evolving political and economic landscape. Going forward, we must offset massive grid expansion created by large data centers and other large corporate energy users, such as Panasonic, that is coming in here for energy, while simultaneously trying not to make large changes to our ecosystem. Kansas has the ability and needs to quickly increase their grid infrastructure. What better way to do so than using the already existing infrastructure of each Kansan's house? As you're all aware, the state of Kansas has recently finalized several major agreements with Evergy aimed at modernizing the state's energy grid, expanding power generation, and establishing new rules for its users. One of those agreements was inked in September of 2025 through the Kansas Corporation Commission, KCC, approving a settlement raising electrical rates for every Kansas Central customer by $128 million, a reduction from the utility's initial $196 million request. This results in an average monthly bill increase of approximately $8.47 monthly, or $101.64 annually for residential customers starting last year in October of 2025. If money is needed to improve the ever-expanding grid, who is going to pay for it? I'd like to conclude my time with a final question for all that work in the state government. When you took the oath of office, did you do so on the premise to protect the freedoms of your constituents? If the answer is yes, then please lift the burden of our out-of-date HOAs, like mine, that halt the ability of every Kansan to become energy independent from the exponential pricing increases that energy companies like Evergy continue to pose on its users. If not, the state of Kansas will soon find itself, as other states that I have lived in, that its rates increases will soon outpace that of annual house incomes. This bill would afford all the residents of the great state the right to the energy independence they deserve and allow us to dictate what costs will be imposed on the next generation with the help of renewable energy. Thank you for your time. I'm open to questions.
Well, thank you for coming to visit. It's nice to see citizens as conferees and not just our folks in the hallway that we see all the time. So thank you for coming in. Do we have any questions for Jake? Senator Tice. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a little bit of a tough question, but just sort of from a philosophical point of view, you characterize us as protecting your freedoms, but along those lines, you're asking us to pick and choose very specific things about HOAs you don't like. Would you be opposed if we amended this bill to dissolve all HOA regulations?
I would not be opposed to that at all.
Very good, thank you.
Can I speak more to that?
Yes, you go ahead. And it was Senator.
The history of HOAs were put in place in order to take out of the governing body of states and federal agencies and put it into the local areas. But as I stated, they're extremely out of date at this point in time. They only recognize what was set in place 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Well, thank you for joining us in person, Jake. We appreciate that.
Not a problem. If anybody has questions at the end, I'm willing to answer and help. I've been at this for over 10 years and very passionate about it.
Well, thank you for joining us. In the consciousness of time, I'm not going to read to you your proponents that are written. You'll see that list in front of you. And we do have one opponent. We'll spend the rest of our time with him and with his testimony and then questions. And just to note, there's one written opponent also. So moving to the opponents, I see no neutrals on our agenda. Are you with us, Rod? We have Rod Hoffman.
Me?
Hello, can you hear us?
You hear me?
Yes, we can. You go right ahead, Rod.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for letting me appear by WebEx rather than in person. I'd much rather be there in person. Before I begin, if you don't mind, I'd like to take 10 seconds for a shout out to Senator Clifford. My hometown is Garden City, and my brother and sister still live there, and I have many cousins, and I sure appreciate the work that he does for Western Kansas and also the rest of the Garden City contingent. On the other House side, Bob Lewis, and I consider Mark Schreiber a Garden City native as well. So shout out to my friends there. Since I left Garden City, I've been practicing law in the Kansas City area for many, many years. And for the last 20 years, most of my work is involving representing homeowners associations. I'm not here to say anyone is anti-solar. Please don't take my testimony that way. But I'm offering testimony as a lawyer who specializes in restrictive covenants and homeowners associations. Let me provide you a little bit of background about homeowners associations. The first one in Kansas was done in 1914 by J.C. Nichols, who developed about 20 or 30 subdivisions in Johnson County, beginning with Mission Hills, which has 1,000 homes. Mission Hills is still a homeowners association today. At the time, there was, of course, no solar panels considered, but J.C. Nichols included a restrictive covenant that says before you make any changes to the exterior of your home, you need to get permission from the homeowners association. And that basis continues today. In almost every new subdivision built in Johnson County in particular, but probably in many cities in Kansas, homeowner associations are created for two reasons. One, the developers want restrictive covenants to protect their home buyers. They could simply put together 10 acres of land and put lots on it without any restrictive covenants. But my understanding is developers have found that restrictive covenants are important for the long-term preservation of neighborhoods. And that's what J.C. Nichols found in his company. They continued developing neighborhoods in Kansas through the 1970s. And at the same time, many communities, local governments are requiring homeowners associations because these homeowners associations have entryway monuments, they have drainage ponds, they have drainage basins that must be maintained by somebody. And so the local governments want the homeowners associations to maintain these drainage basins or other what we call common spaces. So there's a reason for homeowners associations to exist. The legal reason that I didn't mention in my materials, but I think it's important, it is not the right of freedom where we can use our property any way we want, but rather it goes to the basis of Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. And Article 1, Section 10 says that states may not pass any laws that impair the right of citizens to make contracts. And the covenant that is recorded in county land records is a contract among all the homeowners in the county. You've heard testimony that it's difficult to change these contracts. Yes, it is. And it often requires ownership or permission of 2/3 of homeowners to change a contract. That's because land contracts are very serious and it should be difficult to change. In my work, I spend a lot of time with homeowners associations talking about the amendment process and working through the amendment process. For example, right now I've got one where a small condominium property, they want to ban smoking. Well, we talk about how the amendment process works to ban smoking. Those are issues that are important to homeowners that live close to each other. And so I think the constitutional aspect is one that I'd ask you to consider very carefully. My next reason for being an Oh, I want to back up and talk about the constitutional issue one more time. It's the issue of precedent. I understand why this may be a social policy concern for your committee and for the legislature, but from the other perspective, it's this: if the legislature decides that they want to re- remove one restrictive covenant of some sort, at what point does the legislature say, well, let's get rid of the next one and the next one and the next one? And the legislature has been really taken a different stance on this constitutional issue. The second reason for my opposition is exactly the word that Senator Reichman focused on, and that's reasonable. My idea of reasonable in all of us is different. And in my work, that word appears from time to time, and none of us can agree on what the word reasonable means. For example, in some of your communities, a reasonable rule would be that solar panels cannot be on the front side or the street side of the community, because these communities focus on aesthetics and curb appeal. That is very popular in the real estate vernacular. So I don't know that any of us can determine what reasonable is. And so I'd ask you to define that. The final reason for my opposition is this, and it doesn't go to the rental issue that the proponent from Sierra Club mentioned, but rather it goes to those communities that are maintenance provided. And there are a lot of those in Johnson County and throughout the state of Kansas. In Garden City, Senator Clifford can help me, but I know there are at least 3, and there may be more, where homeowners own their structure, but they delegate the maintenance and repair of the roofs to a homeowners association, so that all the roofs are repaired at one time, replaced at one time. They all look alike. And there are a lot of communities in Johnson County and throughout the state that have what we call townhomes, villas, patio homes, townhouses. Some are condominiums where an owner owns his own structure, but he delegates the maintenance of the roof to somebody else. And so if you are so inclined to adopt a bill that would remove the restrictive covenant on solar panels, I would ask you to add this language that I put in my materials. This subsection or this law provides only to rooftops that are owned, controlled, and maintained by the owner of the individual property. And the word controlled and maintained applies to those maintenance provided communities. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Rod. You sound like a rural Kansas guy to me. So do we have any questions for Rod? Senator Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the shout out, Rod. Go Buffs.
Yes.
I do have a question. I, of course, in an HOA in Southwind and Garden City. I'm in an HOA in Riley County with a townhome there. It seems like the 2/3 threshold is just impossible to meet due to apathy and some things that have been cited by proponents. You did hint at that being a high bar because of property rights, but what are your thoughts about us dropping those 2/3 requirements and maybe go to simple majorities? Thank you.
Some communities do have simple majorities, but let me give you one example of one that I worked on about 15 years ago. It's a community in Overland Park where a lot of homeowners worked for the Sprint company. You remember Sprint built a big campus there, and then shortly afterwards, they decided to move the headquarters to Washington, D.C. The homeowners association consisted of about 200 homes in the community. They were concerned about Sprint buying up the properties because they were transferring employees to Washington and making rental properties out of those homes in Overland Park. The homeowners association wanted to adopt a restrictive covenant that would prevent rentals, that would require homeowners to live in their homes. It required 2/3 of owners to sign off on it. That board of directors was so motivated to make sure that there weren't going to be a volume of rental properties in the community. They went door to door in the July, in the heat of the summer, to get this 2/3 approval done with their neighbors, and they accomplished it in 2 weeks. The message of that is unmistakable. The message is, if it's important to the community, it can be done. I've had other changes where it takes up to 2 years. Sometimes take it doesn't take hold. But my point to you simply is this, Senator: if it's important to the community, it can be done. But if it's not important to the community, there was comments about people don't show up to the annual meetings. One of the reasons they don't show up, in my opinion, is sort of the reason that the majority of voters don't show up on your November elections. They're either satisfied or they're apathetic. But that doesn't mean that the homeowners that signed these or bought into these neighborhoods with covenants should be allowed to reduce the majority to a lower number.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Bowser, then we'll go to Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to remind this committee that last year we discussed restrictive covenants. You might remember that last year we had a racial covenant that was brought to us by Wichita State, and this racial covenant was designed to keep people of color from living in certain neighborhoods. And in fact, I carried that bill on the Senate floor. I think it was SB 192. That sort of proved to us that not all of these covenants are good and they don't make sense. I'm a big believer in individual property rights and common sense legislation. This bill, SB 144, makes sense to me. Electric use is not going down, it's going up. And anytime someone wants to provide for their own needs, anytime they want to provide for their own needs, in this case electricity, I'll support that. I'm going to be in favor of SB 144. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the gentleman who's testifying virtually, you said that you would offer an amendment regarding roofs, the maintenance of the roofs. Would that also include perhaps the insurance company? How would they play into that of insurance of that roof? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's a very difficult question because each of these maintenance provided communities do have language in their covenants that talk about roofs. And in most cases, the roofs are insured a variety of ways. Either the HOA buys insurance for all of roofs. In some cases, the individual owner buys insurance for the roof, but the declaration of covenants says that the HOA is the insurance trustee who must sign off on receipt of the insurance proceeds and payment to the contractor. So the difficulty with solar panels on maintenance provided communities is if there is a hail loss or if there's deterioration of the roof, then somebody has to pay to remove the solar panels and reinstall them. And there's nothing in this bill that talks about that. And there's nothing in our restrictive covenants that talk about that. That's why I asked for an exception for maintenance provided communities that shouldn't be covered by this bill.
Right, I don't see any other questions. I know I appreciate as a legislator when someone brings solutions, how to make a bill better and to offer that to us. So I really do appreciate your testimony on that. And as you've listened to the hearing, if you have more ideas for us, if we decide to move forward with this bill, I'd be interested in knowing those as well, because you seem very common sense and you see the issue in front of us and how we have to wrestle with it to find that balance. So I appreciate your testimony.
As an aside, my son in Colorado has solar panels, so I know it has its value.
Well, thank you for joining us, Rod, and we may reach out to you for more information too to help us along with this. So,
I hope to meet you in person. Thank you.
Well, yes, you come visit us anytime. So we do have written, and it's very brief, and it does back up what Rod just mentioned as well. And I have no other person on our list, and we've hit the right amount of time to get to our next meeting. So with that, we're adjourned.